Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06 on O'Connor and Company on this Monday morning. Hey, what's new, guys? Anything happen there? Friday afternoon, over the weekend? I don't know. Are the walls closing in on the Biden presidency? We got full coverage. 7:05 Joe DeGeneva. Good day to have Joe. He might just stay the whole hour. Oh, he can't, because at 7:35 we got Sean Spicer, and at 8:05 Kurt Schlichter. And look who's back. It's Julie Gunlock. What's your name again? Julie
Good
Gunlock.
morning.
Good morning. Welcome back from vacation. I hope it was fabulous.
It was.
And see, this is the best way to do a vacation. You're gone all week, and then the last day of your vacation, Friday afternoon, boom, nuclear bomb of a story drops, and you get to get right on it Monday morning. Yeah. So let's get right to it.
Let's do.
That's Julie Gunlock. I'm Larry O'Connor. I had the same thing. I saw this thing develop around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, oh, I got to wait till Monday morning to talk about this. And then I got the call, like last minute, Mark Levin's entire internet and networking system went down where he in his bunker. And boy, I don't want to be Comcast today, by the way. He was ranting about Comcast on Twitter because of this. And so they called me to fill in for Mark on Friday evening,
nice.
6 to 9. So I got to do sort of a breaking, this special counsel thing just happened. Let's break it down and analyze it. And I want to pick up where we left off because nothing really changed over the weekend, to be honest. In fact, that's a big part of the story. By now, you know that Merrick Garland announced Friday afternoon, corruptly, embarrassingly, transparently, obviously covering up and doing whatever they can to keep the truth from coming out about the Biden family. But actually, it was such a ham-handed, obvious, transparent's the right word for it, transparently corrupt move that no one's buying it. The biggest story over the weekend is that I saw one Democrat on television saying everything's fine. There's nothing to see there. And it was this joker, Dan Goldman, who, again, let me just be clear here. You've got all of the upper echelon of the Democratic Party to step out and say, oh, Joe, everything's fine. There's nothing to see here. There's no crime. There's no nothing. In fact, and if Hunter Biden did something bad, because, you know, he's a real troubled soul, that Hunter Biden. Well, this is the right thing to do. We have a special counsel now, so we'll get to justice. Everyone should. You didn't see Chuck Schumer. You didn't see Nancy Pelosi. You didn't see AOC. You didn't see Bernie Sanders. You didn't see Elizabeth Warren. You didn't see anyone. You didn't see Pete Buttigieg. You didn't see Kamala Harris. You didn't see anybody saying that. You had one guy, this Representative Dan Goldman, who is in a safe district in New York. He's literally been in Congress for 6 months, and he's independently wealthy. So he doesn't have to worry about raising money.
They trot this guy out.
This is their guy right now.
Yeah.
And there was no one. You want to know if this was a bad day for Biden and the Democrats? Just look at that right there. Okay. Yeah. But still, that doesn't stop our very favorite, our ER Republicans, who understandably are so beaten down, and so without any kind of hope or any kind of belief that our system is in some way will reach justice. Because I get it. Look at the last 10 years. Look at Hillary Clinton. Look at Russian collusion. Look at everything. Look at the Ukraine phone call. Look at all of it. I recognize why you would see something like this and say, oh, here you go. This is we're watching the cover-up before our eyes, and they're going to get away with it, and nothing's going to happen. And screaming at Republicans, you do so, because Republicans all put out statements Friday about this. Right. And there's, and everybody's yelling, we'll do something about it. Okay, well, they are doing something about it. It was Friday afternoon, and they're in recess right now, but they are coming back. But actually, none of this would happen if it weren't the Republicans getting the majority in 2022. You remember, Julie, we talked about this. Everyone was like, well, we should have gotten a 40-seat majority. Okay, your 40-seat majority actually still wouldn't get any laws passed.
Right.
Because you've got Biden in the White House. All you needed last election, I wish we had more, but all you needed was 1-seat majority. You get the committees. You get subpoena power. You get to set the agenda. You get to investigate all the things that Nancy Pelosi ignored for the last 2 years. And suddenly things will start happening. And look where we are right now.
You said that.
Look where we are.
You said that early on. You said all we need is one.
That's what we said.
All we need.
You said it too.
Well,
you agreed with me.
I think I was more of an ER.
So here we were Friday, and here's Merrick Garland. This was embarrassing. This was he did, and the way he turned away from the podium at the end and didn't take questions. So before you hear Merrick Garland announce that David Weiss would be elevated to special counsel, understand something. This man, Merrick Garland, and David Weiss, the U.S. attorney in question here, who has now been named special counsel, they're both under oath telling Congress that David Weiss had all the power he needed. They're both under oath saying we don't need a special counsel because David Weiss is a de facto special counsel. He can if he thinks somebody committed a crime,
right,
he can bring the charges. If he thinks the crime was committed in another district outside of his jurisdiction, he can bring those charges. He doesn't need to ask permission of Merrick Garland. He doesn't need to ask permission of any other U.S. attorneys. He doesn't ask permission of anyone. He is completely empowered to bring charges. That's what both of them said under oath until the IRS whistleblowers showed up.
Yep.
And Gary Shape, and they stood up and they said, no, actually, we were told exactly the opposite. David Weiss told us exactly the opposite because we had charges. We brought the evidence. And he said it's out of his hands. He can't make the decision. Then he puts together this sweetheart plea deal that was completely extraordinary, completely unprecedented. Thank God the judge saw through it and asked one simple question: what does this do for immunity in the future? And the entire house of cards falls apart. And now this is the guy that Merrick Garland decided to appoint.
On Tuesday of this week, Mr. Weiss advised me that in his judgment, his investigation had reached a stage at which he should continue his work as a special counsel, and he asked to be so appointed. Upon considering his request, as well as the extraordinary circumstances relating to this matter, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint him as special counsel.
But wait a minute. I thought he had all the powers he needed.
Right.
So now what does this do? What this does is, theoretically, it gives them the fig leaf that, look, we're following justice. We're investigating this. We've even appointed a special counsel. You notice it's all about the Hunter Biden investigation. Joe Biden's name was never raised.
Right.
Number one. Also, theoretically, people are speculating, although I don't think that this is 100% true, but they're speculating that this allows Mr. Weiss, when he's subpoenaed by the Judiciary Committee, the Oversight Committee, or the Ways and Means Committee to answer for what these whistleblowers have said, he can say, yeah, pound sand, I'm not going to testify. I'm a special counsel, and I'm in the middle of an investigation, and it will impede my investigation. I'm not so sure about that, by the way. I don't think this gives him a get-out-of-testimony-free card. I know the precedent is set that that's what we've done, but it's not written in code. It's not written in law. We'll ask Joe DeGeneva about that and many other things at 7:05. But here,
that's the question I had.
Does this get him out of? Well,
yeah.
So I'll give you my opinion on that, non-legal opinion, but really more of a political opinion. But also, I think it might be irrelevant by the end of the week because I don't think he lasts. I don't think this holds up, and I'll tell you why coming up in a moment. There's a lot more, obviously, a lot more that was said over the weekend. Especially, here's the other thing. You want to know whether this was good or bad for the Democrats and good or bad for Joe Biden, good or bad for Republicans. Number one, look at the fact that only one Democrat came out and said anything about it, this clown, Dan Goldman. But here's number two. Look how the media is reacting. Look how the media is reacting to this, and that tells you everything you need to know. More of that in just a moment, including what Chuck Todd said yesterday, which you will love. In a moment. First, it's 5:15.
News Talk 105.9.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
All right, following up, Julie Gunn, I truly believe, I think this is so bad. I think the media reaction to it is obvious, as I'll show you in a moment from Chuck Todd. I believe that it's so transparent. The fact that no Democrats came out to defend this, the fact that things are boxed in, it's going to be such an ugly scene in the White House briefing room today. Because here's the thing: this is a game changer. They can't ignore it anymore. Suddenly, you saw stories, and of course, they're biased stories. Of course, they're trying to spin it. But the fact is, as we know from our friends at Media Research Center, they've been ignoring. They haven't mentioned Burisma. They haven't mentioned Ukraine. They haven't mentioned Gary Shapley and the IRS whistleblowers. They've ignored this thing 100%. They can't anymore. And that changes things. And obviously, the fact that David Weiss should have been brought, it was supposed to be questioned. We saw reporters saying, well, as I said, this keeps David Weiss from having to testify about his plea deal. They're admitting that there was something wrong with the plea deal.
Right.
They're admitting that David Weiss, the man who was just named special counsel, was actually was going to be brought in as part of the investigation into the cover-up and obstruction of justice. So they're conceding a whole lot of the things that they forget about conceding. They ignored and pretended wasn't even news a week ago. I don't think the David Weiss thing stands. I think when House Republicans are back, and they might not even need to come back to be able to put pressure on, because for the first time in a long time, I saw unanimity from Kevin McCarthy to Steve Scalise to James Comer to Jim Jordan to Jason Smith to National Review to the Federalist to Heritage Foundation. I mean, when was the last time you saw conservatives lined up shoulder to shoulder saying this? Jonah Goldberg, for crying out loud.
It hasn't happened since Trump was elected.
Since Trump was elected. Unanimity, every Republican, none of them are doing the Mitt Romney thing. None of them are standing up there saying, well, this is our process, and we'll allow the justice system to play itself out. And Mr. Weiss is a fine man with a fine reputation, and I have every faith that he is going to know across the board.
Yep.
And I don't think it stands. I don't think it lasts through the week. I really don't. I think by Friday you'll see another special counsel.
Who do you think that special
I have no idea.
counsel?
Joe DeGeneva.
That'd be great.
Mark Levin. Again, that's not by legal analysis. And yes, I know you're saying, oh, you're naive, Larry. You're right. I might be wrong. But I'm also seeing things that I haven't seen, just as I mentioned, in a long, 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 long time.
Yeah.
Coming out and screaming about this and recognizing how insane this is and how ridiculous and how insulting to our intelligence it is.
That's it. Yeah.
Let me get you to, let's see. Oh, well, here's a little bit. This is my favorite. I don't want to wait. Chuck Todd. So I was waiting. Oh, God. I was like, how's Chuck Todd going to cover this? Right. How is Chuck Todd? Because they can't ignore it anymore. This is the key. They can't ignore it. Keep asking yourself a couple of questions. Is the media finally covering this story that they've ignored for 2 years? Yes. It's impossible for them to ignore now. That's huge. Game changer, number one. Number two, what's their mood like? You should have seen Dana Bash on Friday afternoon look like someone had just shot her puppy dog.
Yeah.
It was actually incredibly amusing to watch her. And she would and also think about the poor viewers who actually get their news from the broadcast networks or from CNN. They have no idea what's going on right now. They don't know anything about this story, and suddenly there's a special counsel. They're like, what? Where did this come from?
Yeah.
Right? It's like whiplash. So look at their mood. And then number three, look at the lack of Democrats who are speaking up and defending Biden. All right? That's a sign. And finally, look at how they're like scrambling. It's like there's got to be something. It can't be what the Republicans have been saying. It can't be what conservatives in the media have been saying. It can't be what Fox News has been. It can't. There must be something more to this. It can't be what talk radio hosts have been saying for the last several years. It can't be. It can't be. Here's Chuck Todd rationalizing it, explaining it away. It's gold. Put this in the Broadcast Hall of Fame. Listen.
Though, Brennan, you can't help but watch all this play out. And it's like Donald Trump has been trying to bring Biden's brand down to him. Goes back to 2018 when he sent Rudy Giuliani to Ukraine. He's been desperate, and he did it. Yeah. And it's Joe Biden's own attorney general that just announced the investigation.
Yeah, I mean, it's basic politics, trying to turn your opponent's strength into a weakness. And one of the things that I think Joe Biden was elected to do was to clear out the mess in the White House, bring ethics and decency back. And this is clearly an effort to do that. Now, I think the White House and the president's reelection need to take this a bit more seriously.
Trump did it. Trump did it. This is all because of Trump. Trump's been trying for years to ruin the Biden brand, and finally he succeeded. This is all Trump. Trump's the one who lined up the meetings with the oligarchs from Ukraine and Kazakhstan and Russia. Trump's the one who engineered at least $20 million of wire transfers to 20 different shell companies. Right. Trump's the guy who got Hunter Biden addicted to crack.
That's
Trump's
right.
the guy who put all those prostitutes in his bedroom. Trump's the guy. It's all Trump. He's just that evil and powerful. Is that not gorgeous?
Well, on Tapper this weekend, I did see there was a little bit of the, this is a troubled man. This is all because. So I did see a little bit of transferring blame to Hunter. Mm-hmm. That this is all because of Hunter and his drug abuse and his drug problems. So I think that's where the media is. They're going to turn on Hunter.
And if Joe is guilty of anything, it's being too loving of a father.
Yes.
That's what the guilt is. Yeah. You're right. Oh, absolutely. Listen, they're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
But the point is, if it weren't for this development Friday, all of Chuck Todd's news on Sunday would be about Trump. It would be about Trump's indictments, about Trump, Trump facing more and all of that. All right, we got plenty more on this, including, as I said, Joe DeGenova at 7:05, Sean Spicer 7:35, Kurt Schlichter 8:05, and I'm only like scratching the surface on what I want to talk about of this. It's 5:24. All right, coming up, I do, like I said, we're just scratching the surface. We've got a little bit more, including some really good reporting from Catherine Herridge yesterday on the special counsel development in the Biden affair. And we're going to give you all those details in a moment. Keep it here. It's a big, busy news day. You're right where you want to be. It's 5:30 on O'Connor and Company. It's 5:36. Let's get right back to it. As I mentioned, Joe DeGenova joins us at 7:05, 7:35, Sean Spicer, and at 8:05, Kurt Schlichter, columnist at Town Hall, also attorney in his own right. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock, back from vacation. Welcome back, Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Did you adopt one of those New England accents while you're up there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Shots, park the car. Yeah.
There you go.
My mom is from there, She used to have that accent.
Does she slip right into it? That's what Meredith...
She does.
Meredith goes to Oklahoma, and like 2 days later, there's like y'alls everywhere. That's how it goes. All right, a little bit here. As I mentioned, that clown representative Dan Goldman showing up on the show. She was on with Jake Tapper, as you mentioned. Here's the story they're sticking with.
Shouldn't President Biden have realized what Hunter was doing here, getting on the phone, talking speakerphone with his business associates? Did he at the very least show a major lapse in judgment and a blind spot with his son on how he handled this?
No, that's a Jake Tapper question. I would have asked the question a little differently. Joe Biden's been in this town for 50 years as either a senator or a vice president and now a president. So when he got on the phone while Hunter had these oligarchs from Russia and Ukraine and Kazakhstan and China, and he knew that money was flowing back and forth, I'm curious, Congressman Goldman, do you think that he's corrupt and part of the scheme, or do you think he's a complete moron? Because there's only two answers there. It's got to be one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, when he diverted, the cars to go to Cafe Milano in Georgetown, is he corrupt or is he just a total moron? Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's
the only he was in
that's
on
right.
it, or he's an imbecile.
Just like sex, it's binary. You're an idiot or you're corrupt.
Here's Dan Goldman's answer. This is all they've got, Julie. Listen to this. Get ready for it, because this is all they got.
Look, I think that same witness also made very clear that they never discussed business, that Hunter Biden was trying to promote an illusion of access to his father for his own reasons. That's Hunter Biden, and you can make it whatever judgment you want to make about whether that was appropriate or not.
Well, there you go.
He's asking you to make that judgment, idiot. The question was, what's your judgment? Was it appropriate or not? He refused to say that, which tells you something.
Yes.
He didn't say, listen, it was totally appropriate for him to call his son. No. So here's what they've got. This is their only defense right now when they're using this guy, Dan Goldman, to float it. They never talked business, and this is all on Hunter. This is Hunter. They're Hunter's done.
They're starting to turn on Hunter. And what's so interesting about this, Larry, is just, a couple weeks ago they were doing, this is the love a man has for his son, which is coordinated. All of this is coordinated with the Biden administration. And now they have been given the green light to turn on Hunter. So,
That's
go from, it's all they've got. This is the last. They waited to the last minute, but this is, or to this being the only option. But this is the only option now.
So as of now, the official word from Joe Biden himself is, my son did nothing wrong. He's never contradicted that.
Mm-hmm. I trust my son.
Even with the
How do you know that? Because I trust my son.
Because I trust my son. My son's never done anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. Everything is fine. Really, did you talk to him? Do you know? No, I never talked to him, but I know he didn't do anything wrong. That's all they've got. So now I guess Joe has to turn on his son, which isn't going to happen, right?
Oh, I think it will.
If he has to, I suppose. Yeah.
Oh, he will in a second.
But understand something else that's fundamentally important, and I'll get a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia and a former special prosecutor himself, Joe DeGenova, to confirm this for me. But the way laws work in this town with regard to selling access, You don't need to talk business to be a participant in a access for sale scheme. So this argument is like, oh, sure, he got on the phone and he had dinner with him, but they never talked business. That's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. It's the power of being able to get your dad on the phone. That's right. It's the power of access. Yeah. And that's what he was selling. You can get on the phone and you know what you can talk about, Larry? You can talk about the weather.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. The weather is
you're still getting access.
Really popular subject there for this sort of thing. All right, so that's all they've got. Now, back to the corrupt actions of the Attorney General, because what have I been telling you for months now? You got your crime, you got your cover-up, you got your obstruction of justice. Well, we saw this play out Friday. It is the cover-up and obstruction of justice part now that we are witnessing, literally witnessing firsthand. Merrick Garland appointing David Weiss. First of all, a lot of speculation here from all circles as to whether David Weiss can even serve as a special counsel, because it's supposed to be somebody from outside the government. The whole reason you get a special counsel on something like this is not only they kept saying, well, he's got the power now. It's not just about giving him the power. It's also to get somebody outside of the government so that they're impartial. They're not beholden to anything.
Right.
They're not. That's why the joke that Robert Mueller was brought in, I mean, it's like technically he was a retired FBI director who came in with the knowledge of how things work, but he wasn't working for the government at the time. He wasn't built. This guy is not only beholden to Joe Biden and Merrick Garland because he's a sitting U.S. attorney, he's also from Delaware. Anybody who gets that job in Delaware is already entrenched in the Biden drama that controls that state.
Yes.
And then there's another reason why David Weiss is the absolute worst person to name as special counsel, and that is because he in his office is part of the obstruction of justice with covering up the Hunter Biden thing with the plea deal. Here is Catherine Herridge on Face the Nation yesterday.
David Weiss, the U.S. attorney in Delaware, had been said to have full ability to bring a prosecution. Why did he feel he needed special counsel status, and what actually changes now?
Well, as you mentioned, Margaret, David Weiss has said that he had the ultimate authority, but based on the order Friday for special counsel status, at his request, he wanted that ultimate authority now in writing. And that makes a lot of sense to me based on our reporting here at CBS News, because we heard exclusively from these IRS whistleblowers who alleged that David Weiss wanted to partner with U.S. attorneys in California and Washington, D.C. to bring charges, but he was refused. He's disputed that. But if you look very closely at the language here in the order, it says that the special counsel is authorized to prosecute federal crimes in any federal jurisdiction. So now he's got it in black and white, so there can be no question.
Does that suggest something political rather than legal?
This is one of the lingering questions in the case, is that why Weiss suddenly decided after 5 years that he needed this elevated status. I think that some of the clues, Margaret, are in the court filings this week, where he said that they had reached an impasse in the negotiations with Hunter Biden's team, and he saw no resolution short of going to trial. I just want to emphasize that plea deal was not standard, so irregular that the judge in Delaware hit pause on it and at one point said to one of Weiss's prosecutors, what is the legal precedent for this case? And they said there was none. And that is why the criticism from Republicans that it was a special deal for a special defendant has resonated.
That's right. The plea deal was not regular. It was unprecedented. There was no precedent anywhere in the 240 years of the history of our nation and the Justice Department. And the guy who put together that unprecedented plea deal for the son of the president to grant him immunity, and now he's the guy who's been elevated to special counsel.
It's laughable.
And
it's
that's
so
why
brazen.
It stinks to high heaven.
Yeah.
And it ain't going to last, I don't think. We'll ask Joe DeGeneva coming up at 7:05. There's more on this, trust me, but there's also a lot more in the news as well, including an update on the devastation in Maui that we will give you in just a moment. First, though, it's 5:45. Well, Julie, the scenes from Lahaina are absolutely unbelievable. I mean, literally, I know this is often used as sort of a cliche, but it looks like a nuclear bomb went off.
It does.
In Lahaina. It's just horrible, these fires. They're calling it a combination of sort of like a hurricane-type winds connected with these fires, as well as relatively dry conditions, relative to Hawaii at least, with a lot of overgrowth. And, of course, that made for the perfect storm. Very curious reports coming out of Hawaii, though, people who survived it saying that they'd never seen anything like it, that they were hearing sounds that sounded like bombs going off. There were some people who thought they were under attack, under a military attack. Strangely, by the way, speaking of that and being under attack, Hawaii, and Maui in particular, but Hawaii in general, has a whole network of siren and alarm systems set up for tsunamis, for volcano, for hurricane, and even dating back to Pearl Harbor, post Pearl Harbor, they put up a bunch of air raids. If you've ever visited Hawaii, you see all of these warning systems set up, evacuations for tsunamis and for hurricanes and things like that, but it all relies on this network of sirens. They didn't go off. The siren system did not operate when this fire started to take off the way that it did.
This reminds me a little of the Indonesia, the tsunami that happened, a decade ago or so, where there was no warning. And you understood they didn't have the infrastructure, but Hawaii certainly does. So it really is confusing why people had no idea why there was no warning.
It's incredibly confusing. There are a lot of questions to be asked. Also, we're seeing on the ground, the people are scrambling. They're as usual, humanity is coming together. They're helping each other out. They're filling their own gas tanks. They're delivering it to people. Where is FEMA on the ground right now? I from the reporting I'm seeing, there's no FEMA. DHS isn't there. Yeah. Both President Biden and Kamala Harris's offices, not them individually, their offices put out statements saying we're not going to go there at this time because we would be a distraction to the relief efforts. By the way, that's exactly what George Bush said.
By the way, nobody wants you there. What we want a resource is FEMA.
Oh, but they demanded George Bush go to Katrina.
Of course,
you'll remember.
Yes,
and the fact that he also said, if I go there right now, it'll be a distraction. Oh, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about Katrina because the people who are dying are black. Okay, well, maybe a whole lot of people who are dying in Hawaii are Asian. Is that why? Is it Biden and Kamala Harris anti-Asian? Biden was riding his bicycle in Rehoboth. Listen to what happened with this exchange with reporters.
Mr. President, are you going to take questions on Maui?
Can you come talk about Maui? I'm looking at it. Can you come talk about Maui, Mr. President?
Can you come talk about Maui? And as he drove by on his bike, he said, "You're looking at it."
God.
He then, yesterday, spent several hours on the beach just sitting there watching the waves in Rehoboth. Yep. And reporters shouted again, do you have any comment? Do you have anything to say about Hawaii? He said no comment.
There are operation centers at FEMA. There's operation centers at the Red Cross that are activated when a disaster like this happens. He didn't even do a photo op at one of these disasters. He didn't even,
yeah, that's right. He could have showed up at the staging centers and everything.
I worked at the American Red Cross during Katrina. Yeah. I know what happens in these ops centers. They are stood up there. People are working in them 24/7 to get resources on the ground. And you usually have politicians stop by and come in. President Bush visited. The idea that he's not doing anything like that.
Well, he still hasn't gone to East Palestine, Ohio.
Right.
That he promised he would. Oh, when the time is right, we'll go there.
Well, he hasn't gone to the border, except once, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, now you're seeing Senator Jeff Markley from Oregon says scientists are clear that climate chaos is wreaking havoc on ecosystems.
Yes.
Wall Street Journal was really quick on this over the weekend. There is no indication that this has anything to do with climate change.
This is maddening, and it's a way to dismiss what's actually happening. This is land management. We saw this with California. Wildfires, same thing.
RFK Jr. of all people actually pushed back on this.
On Twitter, he said this has to do with land management. Right. There used to be agricultural, sort of plantations, these enormous farms, pineapples, sugar, and many of those farms have left, and it's been replaced now instead of these sort of, agriculture of pineapples and other crops.
Right, cultivated land.
Yes,
it's actually
you now
irrigated.
Have these grasses that die that are just tinder for fire, and nobody is, managing them. It's very bad land management in Hawaii, similar to what we're seeing in California and Canada, by the way.
It's 5:54. Coming up, we will continue and reset on the Hunter Biden Special Counsel story. And a simple question for you. Is Biden done? Is this the beginning of the end? It's 6 o'clock.